Welcome to Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center's food safety class. My name is Kerry McMillen, and I manage the medical nutrition therapy program here. I'll be presenting the first half of this class, which will focus on our food safety guidelines. And then Paula Macris will join the second half of the presentation and present on our immunosuppressed diet. We will be moving to some short video clips to illustrate concepts throughout this presentation, so just stay tuned for those. So let's just start talking about why it's important to follow the food safety guidelines and the immunosuppressed diet. The reason for this is really when your immune system is low, you have a higher risk of getting an infection. Just like you may be at a higher risk of getting a cold or a flu if you're around people with symptoms, you're also more at risk for getting a foodborne illness. And this class is going to teach you how to prevent this from happening or reduce the risk from this happening. So really, again, what we want to review, the first part of this class will be going through the food safety guidelines. And then the second part of the class will be going through the immunosuppressed diet for the goal to just decrease your overall risk of getting an infection from food. So first, who should really be following this diet? If you've had an allogeneic transplant, meaning you've gotten your cells from somebody else, you will want to follow this diet guideline until you're off all immunosuppressive medications. These would be medications like MMF, cyclosporin, tacrolimus, prednisone, etc. You would want to follow this diet guideline until you're off all your immunosuppressive medications and feeling well. If you've received an autologous transplant, meaning that you've gotten your stem cells back and they were originally yours, you would want to follow this guideline for 3 months after your transplant. So for example, if your infusion date was September 1st, you would be wanting to follow this guideline until December 1st, as that is 3 months later. If you've received a cellular immunotherapy treatment or other oncology-related cancer treatment, you would want to follow these guidelines anytime your absolute neutrophil count, or ANC, is less than 1,000. So let's really dive in now and talk about the 4 simple food safety steps. This is really what we're going to be focusing on for the first part of our presentation. The first step is really focusing on the word clean. This means we want to wash our hands and sanitize surfaces often. By sanitizing, we mean we want to get something completely free of bacteria or any other germs. The second step is to make sure we focus on separation. And that means we're separating raw foods such as uncooked beef, pork, lamb, poultry, etc., from ready-to-eat foods such as fruits, vegetables, crackers, or nuts. And this is really to avoid cross-contamination. So we'll be walking through some steps and slides coming up on how to keep these things separate from each other to prevent that cross-contamination. The third step is really to ensure that we're cooking foods to the proper temperatures, and that allows any of the bacteria to be killed. And then the fourth step is to ensure that we are chilling foods properly. And really that's ensuring that your refrigerator is set to 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. So let's jump into step 1, which is really focusing on the concepts around the first point, which is keeping everything clean. So we want to make sure that everyone understands the difference between washing and disinfecting. So washing is really a process that removes dirt, dust, and other soils from surfaces, and this reduces the amount of all types of germs. So this is a process that you're very familiar with when we wash our hands. That's using soap and water. It's really reducing the amount of dirt, dust, and other bacteria on our hands and skin. Disinfecting is where we're actually getting something completely clean and free of viruses and bacteria. That would be used more on surfaces where we would want to involve more bleach to really ensure that these are completely clean. So to speak about hand washing, we know that this is one of the most important steps of food safety. The reason for this is it significantly reduces the risk of having foodborne illness, and proper hand washing actually reduces foodborne illness or food poisoning by 50%. So this is a really easy step to take to reduce your risk of getting ill. So to just walk through some steps on when you should wash your hands, this is something we should all be in the habit of just in our everyday life. So you would want to wash your hands before you prepare foods and after you do the following items. If you're touching raw meat or raw eggs, after using the restroom or changing diapers, after handling garbage or touching pets. In terms of how to wash your hands properly, what you really want to do is to wet your hands with clean, warm water, lather your hands by rubbing them together with soap, and then you can scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. That's about as long as it takes to sing the ABCs or Happy Birthday twice. Then you want to rinse your hands under clean running water and dry your hands with a clean paper towel or air dry them. The reason we recommend this fifth point is because if you continually use a dishcloth, it can stay wet. And if you did not clean your hands thoroughly, bacteria can be harbored actually on that dishcloth. We also want to point out that it's important that you remember easily missed spots, such as your fingernails and in between your fingers.
When washing your hands, wash with warm soapy water for 20 seconds. Use friction and remember to get easily missed spots, such as your fingernails. When finished washing, dry your hands with a paper towel or a single-use cloth.
So in terms of surfaces, it's also really important to wash your surfaces. So you want to ensure that you're washing your surfaces daily. That includes your countertops, cutting boards, your dishes after use, after using utensils, sponges and dishcloths, and any other items that touch ready-to-eat foods. We also recommend that you wipe down surfaces of lids of canned foods and drinks before you open them. This is different than the next concept, which is disinfecting surfaces often. And so what we recommend is that you want to make your own potentially disinfecting solution. And that is easily made by mixing 4 teaspoons of unscented bleach with 1 quart of water. You would then want to pour this into a covered container, such as a spray bottle, label it, and then you want to make the fresh solution every day. The other option is if you buy a disinfecting solution from the store, you do not need to change this every day, but you do want to check the label to make sure it contains bleach. So in terms of when you would want to disinfect surfaces, again, this is different than washing. You would want to disinfect surfaces after each use for anything that touches raw meat, such as a cutting board, dishes, utensils, or countertops. You want to make sure you're disinfecting your sponges and dishcloths daily. So that could either be you're soaking in the bleach solution for 5 minutes, you're dampening and heating for 1 minute in the microwave, or you're running through the dishwasher or washing machine on a hot or sanitizing cycle. Weekly, we recommend that you disinfect anything that touches ready-to-eat foods. This would mean your cutting boards, your dishes, countertops, etc. We do also recommend that you disinfect your refrigerator inside and out weekly, and daily if you notice any spills. Okay, so in terms of cutting boards, we get a lot of questions about this, and these are really our best guidelines for cutting board use. We do not recommend that you use cutting boards with cracks or grooves in them. And the reason for this is because bacteria or other items that might cause a foodborne illness can actually harbor in cracks and grooves. So we do recommend having 2 cutting boards, one for raw meat that you would disinfect after each use, and one for ready-to-eat foods where you would disinfect it weekly, but wash it after each use. To disinfect a cutting board, we recommend the following steps. you would want to fill your sink with enough bleach solution that it can soak the entire surface of the cutting board. You'd want to let it sit and soak for 2 minutes and then rinse with hot water or run through the dishwasher. And afterwards, if you rinse it in hot water, you can just let it air dry. We do say that either wood or plastic cutting boards are fine to use. We just recommend that whichever type you purchase, it does not have those cracks or grooves in it.
Avoid using cutting boards that are cracked or scored. Consider having 2 cutting boards, one for raw meats that you will disinfect after each use, and one for ready-to-eat foods.
So let's move on now to the second step, which is how to avoid cross-contamination by separating raw and ready-to-eat foods. So this slide nicely goes through the difference between raw foods and ready-to-eat foods. What you'll notice is that the raw food items are foods that are typically cooked before you eat them. That would include things like beef, poultry, wild game, seafood, and eggs. Ready-to-eat foods are foods that you would typically eat as they are. That would be items like produce, your bread products, nuts, and other items that do not require cooking or reheating before serving. So again, just to emphasize and define cross-contamination, this is when harmful bacteria spreads from one food or surface to another. So we would like to prevent this, especially while your immune system is compromised. And so here are some ideas on how to prevent cross-contamination. When you're grocery shopping, we recommend that you keep raw meats away from fruits and vegetables or ready-to-eat foods in your cart. We would recommend that you request putting raw meat in a separate plastic bag when bagging your groceries. And we do not recommend using reusable bags for raw meats or eggs unless you disinfect them between grocery trips.
Sanitize reusable bags that have been used to carry raw meat, fish, or eggs before each use.
Other ideas would be when you're at home, we would recommend that you keep your raw meat on the bottom shelf of the refrigerator as depicted in this picture on the right. Why this is important is that if there's a leak in the packaging, it's not going to drip through other food items that you may not be aware of. When you're cooking, we recommend that you use separate plates for raw meat and cooked meats. And we recommend that you do not reuse a marinade that you used on raw foods unless you boil the marinade first. So now what we're going to do is talk through the third step, which is ensuring that your food is cooked to the proper temperature to avoid foodborne illness. And what we're really looking for here is ensuring that the foods that you're making are actually cooked to the proper temperature that the USDA and FDA recommends. We highly recommend that you get a food thermometer, which is depicted in this bottom right-hand picture, that can accurately tell the temperature of the food you're cooking. The recommended temperatures are listed below. There are foods that are required to be at 165 degrees Fahrenheit to be considered fully cooked. These are items such as turkey, chicken, sauces, luncheon meats, hot dogs, etc. And then as we go down the temperature scale, 160 degrees Fahrenheit is appropriate for beef and pork and egg dishes. And then 145 degrees Fahrenheit is appropriate for beef steaks and fish and seafood. In order to use a meat thermometer correctly, we recommend that you put it in the thickest part of the food to check the internal temperature. Now we're going to go through our last step, which is to ensure we're chilling foods appropriately. And the reason this is important is we want to ensure that we are not having foods kept in what we would call the danger zone, which is where foods are sitting above 40 degrees and less than about 140 degrees. So a key step in this is just making sure that refrigerated foods are kept at 40 degrees or below, and that all foods that need to be refrigerated are in the refrigerator within 2 hours. So, for example, if you have a large amount of leftovers, what we would recommend in order to ensure that food is being cooled appropriately is that you would want to divide large amounts of leftovers into shallow containers. You could then chill the leftovers uncovered on the top shelf of the refrigerator until they reach 40 degrees and then cover them. Before freezing food, we do recommend that you chill it first to 40 degrees in the refrigerator. And then again, you always want to use an appliance thermometer to ensure that your refrigerator temperature is set at 40 degrees or below, and your freezer temperature is at 0 degrees or below. We really, again, do not recommend that you let perishable food sit out at temperatures in that danger zone, which is between 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 2 hours.
From a large pot, place leftovers into a shallow container and place in the top shelf of the refrigerator until it's cooled to 40 degrees. Once it's cooled, covered with a lid to store your leftovers or put them in the freezer.
Some other tips we have for ensuring that food is not left out for too long includes, please do not put too many items in the refrigerator. Air actually must be able to circulate and flow between foods to cool it properly. We also recommend that if you are marinating foods, that this happens in the refrigerator and not on the countertop. We also recommend that you do not defrost foods at room temperature. It's more appropriate and less risky to defrost it in the refrigerator, in the microwave, or under cold running water. In terms of leftovers, we do not recommend leftovers of perishable foods within 4 days after preparing. So, for example, it might be helpful to add labels to your food items to ensure that if you cook something on Monday, that should really be eaten within 4 days after preparation, or it should be frozen to extend its use. One important step is if you can't remember exactly when you made it or what the food item is in particular, we really want to abide by the phrase that when in doubt, throw it out. That concludes the food safety guidelines section of this talk, and I will now turn it over to Paula, who will go over the immunosuppressed patient diet.
Hello, I'm Paula Macris, registered dietitian at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, and today I'm going to be discussing the immunosuppressed diet. Let's look first at the dairy foods, and the keyword here is pasteurized. We want to make sure that you're choosing pasteurized milk and other milk products, such as pasteurized cheeses and yogurts. Commercially packaged hard and semi-soft cheeses, such as cream cheese, is acceptable, as are commercially packaged foods prepared by a licensed food manufacturer. Pasteurized yogurt and kefir, while they do contain live active cultures, are acceptable if they're made with pasteurized milk. If you purchase any cheeses that are sliced from a deli, you do need to cook the cheese. And finally, some foods to hold off on in the dairy foods group. And this would include cheeses that have molds, such as blue cheese, gorgonzola, or Roquefort. Cheeses that have uncooked vegetables that are not pasteurized after the vegetables have been added, such as a pepper jack cheese. And finally, avoid soft serve ice cream, soft serve frozen yogurt, and milkshakes made from soft serve ice cream. Meat and meat substitutes. Choose cooked, commercially packaged, or deli sliced, pre-cooked meats such as cold cuts or hot dogs. Cooked or pasteurized tofu is also acceptable. And with the tofu, you'll want to cut it up in 1-inch squares, boil it for 5 minutes, and then use that to prepare whatever dish you're cooking. Pasteurized eggs are also acceptable, and pasteurized eggs can also be consumed if the yolk is not firm. It's important to pre-cook, package, or deli slice meats to steaming hot or about 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Also want to avoid raw fish. This would be foods like sushi, sashimi, poke, and ceviche.
When cooking eggs, cook them until the yolk and the white are firm. Alternatively, you may use pasteurized eggs. Pasteurized eggs will be labeled very clearly on the package and will have a little P stamped on the egg. Please be careful when you're reading labels. Pasteurized is not the same thing as pasture-raised. For lunch meats, you may buy lunch meats either in pre-packaged or off of the slicer at the deli. Any lunch meats must be heated before they're consumed. The way to do that is to take the lunch meat out of the package, put it on a clean paper towel, and put this in the microwave and heat it until it is steaming. You may consume the lunch meat cold as long as it has been heated first.
Fruits and vegetables. Choose whole fruits and vegetables. Dried herbs and spices are acceptable. And shelf-stable, meaning that it doesn't need to be refrigerated. Salsas and fruit are also acceptable, as are pasteurized juices. With this group, we want to avoid any kind of fresh refrigerated salsas. These are the salsas found in the refrigerator section of the grocery store. Avoid all raw sprouts, salads from the deli, and any kind of pre-cut fruits or vegetables. For example, a melon that's been pre-cut that has plastic wrap around it. Also avoid kimchi or non-pasteurized sauerkraut. Washing fruits and vegetables. Be sure that you're washing all fresh fruits and vegetables thoroughly under clean running water. And this would include any kind of produce with peels, such as bananas, melons, or oranges. It's also important to wash any pre-washed bagged produce, such as salad kits. Scrub produce with a brush that has a firm or rough skin or rind with foods such as cantaloupe, potatoes, or avocados. And remember to rinse leaves of leafy vegetables thoroughly. This would be bagged salads, any kind of other leafy greens like kale or spinach.
So we do allow raw fruits and vegetables to be consumed as long as they are properly washed in cold running water. For a rougher vegetable like a potato or an avocado, we ask that you use a scrub brush to give it a good scrub. For any fruit that has a peel like a banana or an orange, we ask that you wash the outside of it before you cut into it. Smaller fruits like grapes and berries, we ask that you put those into a colander and roll them around under the water until they are clean. Leafy greens, including lettuces, should have each leaf individually washed. Bagged lettuce mixes are acceptable. Even if it says it's been washed already, please wash it again, just to be absolutely sure. Anytime that you are inpatient at University of Washington or at Seattle Children's, you will see fresh fruits and vegetables on the menu. Please know that those have been washed according to our guidelines and they are safe to order.
Nuts and seeds. Choose shelled roasted nuts or nuts cooked into foods. And commercially prepared peanut butter or other nut butters are acceptable. With this group, you'll want to avoid any kind of raw nuts or seeds, including raw flax or chia seeds. Avoid any kind of nuts in the shell, such as pistachios or peanuts. And also avoid ready-to-eat bulk foods. Ready-to-eat bulk foods, however, are acceptable to eat if you cook them before eating.
When choosing nuts and seeds, choose products that are roasted and out of the shell that come in packages, not products that are in the bulk section. If you do have raw nuts or seeds around that you need to use, you may use them as long as you roast them first or if you bake them into something.
Bread, grain, and cereal products. All breads and baked goods are going to be acceptable, as are cooked grain products and cereals. And you want to remember when you do buy bread that the entire loaf should be sealed. Avoid any kind of raw grains, such as muesli cereal or some granola bars. And it's important to check the labels on granola bars, as some may have raw oats or other grains. Bread, grain, and desserts that you grab from the bread cases or other places that are self-serve should also be avoided. And again, avoiding ready-to-eat bulk foods unless they're cooked before eating.
When choosing bread products, please avoid any artisan bread products that are open to the public, as these may have been touched by other people. It is okay to ask for artisan breads that have been stored behind a countertop. Otherwise, we ask that you choose prepackaged bread products only. If the bread product contains nuts and seeds, these are acceptable as the baking process has essentially roasted the nuts. We do ask that you avoid any raw grain products such as muesli cereals.
Fats. Any type of vegetable oils are acceptable. Lard, margarine, and butter should be refrigerated. And any type of shelf-stable mayonnaise or salad dressings, including shelf-stable blue cheese salad dressing, is acceptable. You'll want to avoid, however, any kind of fresh, refrigerated, commercially prepared salad dressings unless they've been made with pasteurized eggs.
When choosing salad dressings, the safest choices are shelf-stable salad dressings that are sold in the middle of the grocery store at room temperature. These do not require refrigeration when they are at the store. Once you get them home and open them, they do need to be stored in their refrigerator. If you prefer refrigerated salad dressings, the type that are sold in the grocery store near the produce section, read the label carefully to ensure that it contains pasteurized eggs. If you have a salad dressing that contains unpasteurized eggs or another cheese that we don't want you to have, such as blue cheese, choose a different option, or better yet, go to something that is shelf-stable.
Meals and soups. Choose cooked meals and soups, and also choose commercially prepared pasteurized miso products. And with this group, you'll want to avoid any kind of homemade or restaurant-prepared miso products, as well as avoiding any kind of self-serve soups at the grocery stores or in restaurants. Beverages. Choose coffee from well-cleaned single-serve coffee machines. Tea and coffee made with boiling water to 212 degrees Fahrenheit is acceptable, as is loose leaf tea if it's made from boiling water, again at 212 degrees. Commercially bottled or canned cold brew coffee is also acceptable. Beverages you'll want to avoid include kombucha or other types of fermented beverages, as well as sun tea. Desserts. Refrigerated or shelf-stable cream or custard-filled pastries are acceptable, as are homemade and commercially baked cookies, cakes, pies, and puddings. You'll want to, however, avoid any kind of desserts from the self-service areas, such as donuts in a case. Other groups of foods. All shelf-stable condiments, such as ketchup and mustard, and dry goods, such as flour and sugar, are acceptable. Pasteurized honey is also acceptable. And you'll want to avoid any kind of raw honey or honey in the comb. Water safety. It's important to choose city or municipal well water as your source. And bottled water that's treated by reverse osmosis, distillation, or filtered through an absolute 1 micron or smaller filter is acceptable. If well water is your source, it needs to be boiled for 15 to 20 minutes, stored in the refrigerator, and then used within 48 hours. With regards to water, you want to avoid any kind of water from private or small community wells. Portable water filter systems, such as Brita or PUR, should also be avoided unless they're used with city or municipal well water. Let's talk a little bit about dining out. Looking specifically first at our hospital food services, Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center Hospital and UW Medical Center Montlake. The room service meals that are on the menu always follow the immunosuppressed diet. It's important to remember, however, that cafeterias and restaurants may not follow the immunosuppressed diet guidelines, so always order your food through the room service meal system. The bistro at Fred Hutch South Lake Union campus. Some things to remember: that the fresh produce used in the salads and sandwiches is properly washed. The lunch meats are cooked, however, with the exception of the roast beef and the salami. Some items may include ingredients not allowed on the immunosuppressed diet, so it's important to check the label on a product or ask staff. When you do go out to eat, try to go at a time when it's not crowded, like an early lunch or dinner. And some things to consider choosing when you are dining out. Cooked vegetables are appropriate, whether they be steamed, stir-fry, baked, sautéed, roasted, grilled, or boiled. and bake fruit, like fruit in a pie or cake. You want to avoid any kind of raw fruits and vegetables or salads. Foods that are open to the public, including salad bars and buffets. And any foods sold by street food vendors, such as food trucks or farmers markets. Here are some tips for safe choices when dining out. Eat hot foods hot and cold foods cold. Check the color and juices of the meat. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the food safety portion, but the juices in the meat should not be pink or red, and the meat should be well cooked. Ask for new unopened bottles or individual packets of condiments like ketchup or mustard. Pack up your own leftovers. Do not let the server or kitchen staff do it for you. Just ask them to bring you the leftover box, and you can pack up your own leftover food. Take a look at the restrooms in the restaurant. Hopefully, if the owner is practicing good hygiene habits in the restroom, they're also practicing it throughout the restaurant. Make sure tables and dinnerware are clean and not touching a wet surface. And finally, King County here in Seattle has restaurant inspection reports available. If you go to this particular website and type in the restaurant you're thinking about going to, it'll give you detailed information on the restaurant inspection. Looking next at fast foods. If you decide to order hamburgers, fish sandwiches, or other types of sandwiches, ask that the foods be freshly prepared. You want to avoid any kind of raw fruits and vegetables, such as lettuce and tomato, on your hamburger or in your taco. Avoid side salads and coleslaw. And also hold off on any kind of special sauces. Patient education videos. If you want to come back, you can watch our food safety video on the Fred Hutch website listed here on the slide, and you'll find it under blood and marrow transplant. You may also find other informative patient education videos on this site. Finally, if you have any questions or need any more general information, please contact your team dietitian. Thank you.